Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, The Israeli. I'm very happy for all those who saw my last two videos and that commented. I do reply to comments. Usually I'll do it on video. But I want to do another video today because I just watched a YouTube clip about the subject, because now it's very hot what is happening and many people are interested. So I thought it would be my due diligence to try to give as much information as possible while this is happening. Now, this is not an easy clip for me. They ask very tough questions. But the interesting thing is that the person they're interviewing is a representative of the Israeli government, which, as I said in the clip before, I am not. Which means, as you'll see, he's not able to really answer all the questions the way maybe a different politician from Israel would, because he represents a certain party. But I don't represent anyone, so whatever I feel he couldn't answer to the right extent, I'll try to expand on. Hopefully it'll be interesting and you guys will enjoy it. And we'll do it as quickly as possible because I don't want this clip to be too long like the last one. Please try to stay through to the end. If you disagree with me, you're more than welcome to comment in the comment section and I will try to answer it. If you like it, please like and subscribe and share it with others if you can. Okay, let's get to it. So let's begin. This is an interview by Hasan. He's a very good interviewer, not pro-Israeli in any way, shape or form. So let's see. He's interviewing here a consul in the Israeli embassy. Let's see what they have to say.
Joining me now is Elad Strohmeyer, spokesperson for the Israeli embassy here in the United States. Thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. Given 500 Palestinian children were killed in the 2014 Gaza war, according to both the UN and human rights groups, how worried should we be tonight that Israel is about to launch another full-scale assault, maybe an invasion of Gaza?
Thank you, Mehdi, for inviting me. I think the question you're asking is something to refer to Hamas spokespeople, because eventually the reality on the ground is that quiet will be responded by quiet. If Hamas is going to continue threatening Israeli civilians, firing rockets indiscriminately towards Israeli towns, then we're going to be forced to respond and respond forcefully. And by the way, this is not just Israel. Any country in the world would have done the same if their cities were attacked, under constant attack by rockets, by terrorist organizations.
Okay, so here there's a few things that I want to say. It's a very hard question. Hearing 500 kids dying in the last wave is not an easy thing to hear, even though today we know that Hamas is using human shields in order to make headlines and to victimize themselves. But even though I still don't justify the Israeli government for not doing more to prevent it. Now, here this guy's talking 7 years later. That incident that they opened with was 2014. This is 7 years later, and this guy is talking again about quiet will be met with quiet. But when you look at what the government has done during the last 7 years, it's absolutely nothing. You know, it's okay to put sanctions on Gaza because they fire rockets and they threaten Israel nonstop, but you still need to give them hope, to give them some kind of future, to do something, and nothing has been done. And therefore, this escalation is not a real surprise to anybody who follows the current events. Now, this time around, should Israel take more precaution dealing with Gaza? I think that if you saw my last two videos, you already know my opinion on that, and my opinion is yes. We should do whatever is needed to stop this as fast as possible and start talking to whoever wants to talk on both sides. But that is a good question. Let's continue seeing what they say.
I mean, any country in the world, most countries in the world are not in charge of a decades-long military occupation. But you mentioned Hamas rocket strikes. I think we can both agree that Hamas firing rockets at civilian...
So again, It's not that many countries don't have decades-old occupations, because many do. It's just not that publicized. The question is, how many countries have a situation like Israel? None. And how many countries that would have a situation like Israel would not try to negotiate at any possible and take any possibility to negotiate? I don't think many. I think most countries after this long will take any opportunity to negotiate. And I think, for example, England and Ireland is a good example of that. And even Pakistan and India is a good example, even though they're still enemies, but they are functioning enemies, I guess. It is a very dangerous border, but there is hope there. So there's definitely hope also in Israel. Let's continue.
Buildings is wrong. Can we both agree on that? I think we can agree on that, right? That's common ground for us.
Hamas firing rockets at civilian population is totally wrong. There is fully agreement with us on that.
Agreed. You got me on. We're 100%. We agree. Air Force destroyed. How is that not anything other than
actually very disfortunate that people?
So I'm going through this faster. They both agree that destroying civilian buildings is wrong, and then of course he brings the fact that Israel destroyed 2 civilian buildings in Gaza and what he thinks about that. So again, I don't know the international law, and the international law will probably agree that if militants are firing rockets from that building or are housing ammunition in that building, and that can be provable, that it can be justified. But I still think, in my opinion, that this guy cannot say that, that Israel should avoid doing that type of stuff, because it doesn't help. It doesn't help in any way. And if there was somebody in there that they want to get, there are other ways to get them. And everybody knows that there are other ways to get them. Now, just so you know, many people in Israel that will hear me saying this will get very upset at me saying this. But this is how I feel. I feel that we should start a new approach, a different look at the future, and stop thinking that we can solve everything with a baseball bat, or here with missiles and rockets, and start trying again. Yes, I know people will say, yes, but we already tried in the Oslo Accord, and it brought a lot of terrorism and a lot of attacks on both sides. And yes, but we should try again, because obviously this approach is not helping either side. Okay, let's continue seeing. So again, this destroying buildings, the international law, the Israeli courts will have to decide whether this was legal or not, and I'm sure they're going to deal with it after this is over. But I think whether it's legal or not legal, it should be avoided.
People are trying to equate the IDF response to Allah is being chosen as the only organization, the only ones in the Middle East that actually care about the loss of life.
But to an argument about international law, suffice to say that most human rights groups criticize Israel for violating human rights law, and they criticize Hamas. But you leveled an apartment to bomb.
Okay, so let's continue this, because I don't want, this is quite a long clip, and I don't want this video to be extremely long.
Okay, I mean, it has erupted because of what's happened in East Jerusalem with the expulsions of Palestinian residents. Hold on, let me ask my question. Let me ask my state dispute. Even though under international law, the United Nations UN Resolution 478, which even Ronald Reagan didn't veto, makes it very clear that the world does not recognize Israel's occupation or annexation of East Jerusalem. In fact, UN officials said on Friday that your government could be guilty of possible war crimes in East Jerusalem under the Geneva Conventions as an occupier transferring its own population into occupied territory.
You know, these lies being perpetuated toward Israel is old, and they're not new. And the reality is that we're a law-abiding country, and right now the dispute in Sheikh Jarrah in East Jerusalem is something that is being discussed in the Israeli courts. It's not yet totally decided, and what we have tried to do is actually to de-escalate the situation on the ground, and it was supposed to be discussed today in the Supreme Court, which is the highest abiding law in Israel, and we have asked the Supreme Court to postpone it because we wanted to de-escalate the tension on the ground. But the reality is this is not
that's the Israeli.
Everybody is trying to escalate the situation. The Palestinian Authority, Hamas, is igniting the situation and trying to prevent any solution to the problems on the ground.
Okay, I want to say something about this. He is right and wrong at the same time. This situation is in Sheikh Jarrah is still not resolved. It's going to be in the Israeli High Court, and I hope and believe that the High Court will say that those families cannot be evicted, and it should go back to the court to find some kind of compensation to the original owners. And also, I believe the international law will say the same thing or something along those lines. So this is not a finished story yet, but I do believe at the end of the day, those families are not going to get evicted. And if they will get evicted, it's going to become a big international story. I'm quite sure of that. But they haven't been evicted yet, and the Supreme Court in Israel is going to deal with that subject soon, apparently. Now, this guy is saying that everybody in the world is responsible for escalating the situation, and he's sort of correct, but he's forgetting one small thing, that another person, another entity that's responsible for escalating the situation is his party, his right-wing party, which right now they are not able to build a government, and the other side is on the verge of building a government, and they don't like it. They don't like it at all. They've been in power for the last 12, 15 years, and they don't want to lose this power. They like being in power. So this kind of escalation, maybe they didn't initiate it, but it definitely doesn't hurt them. It makes them stronger in the polls. It makes them stronger in the right. It makes them stronger with the nationalists. It makes them stronger in many, many ways. And they're going to use it as propaganda later in the fifth elections that Israel are going to have. Hopefully not soon, but it looks like it's going to happen. So he's forgetting that point as well. And that's an important point. Let's continue.
Okay, you made that point. You say 1980, which the Reagan administration did not veto 14 UN Rights Watch.
So let's
First
continue.
time, Mayor of Jerusalem, Aria King, a settler leader who told the New York Times on Friday that these evictions are, quote, of course part of a wider strategy of installing layers of Jews, his words, throughout East Jerusalem. So, okay, it's not apartheid.
Of Jerusalem is a politician from different different opinions in Israel with different...
Okay, so I want to answer that as well. When it comes to East Jerusalem and the territories in Judea and Samaria, the Palestinian territories, there are the right wing, the right parties, the right groups are trying to use the law in order to place themselves in strategical places in those areas. Now, in order to make it a fact that it's part of Israel, that it's part of the Jewish community. Now, I think personally, and this is my opinion, and this is very important, that this is against the future of Israel, and this is against the Zionist dream, and this is against the Zionist beliefs. And I'll talk in a different video what Zionism is for me, because it's very important how you define it. Now, the Supreme Court in Israel is abiding the international laws that Israel are signed on. So usually it prevents this type of things from happening or happening too widespread. But it does happen slowly, because the right wing is in government for a very long time now. But in my opinion, East Jerusalem should be given to the Palestinians in negotiations, but it's a very big problem. Anybody who's been to Jerusalem and has been to East Jerusalem had seen two things immediately, two things that contradict each other when it comes to peace negotiations. One thing is that it's part of Jerusalem. It's a continuation of Jerusalem. It's just part of it. Going from Jerusalem to East Jerusalem, you don't really feel that you went through, except the other thing that you notice immediately, that in East Jerusalem you have only Arabs. Yes, there might be a few Jews living there, but generally 99% are Arabs that are living there. 200,000, I think, or so. And I think it'll be in Israel's interest to make those people Palestinian citizens and make that area part of the future Palestinian state. Now, because I am for the two-state solution, doing the same kind of thing in the Palestinian territories also hurts the future peace negotiations that Israel needs them just as much as the Palestinians. So this whole thing of annexation of the territories and trying to take over parts of East Jerusalem, I see it as something that's hurting Israel and hurting Israeli interests. But this guy is representing a right-wing government that supports the settlers. Therefore, he cannot talk against them. He cannot say anything against them. But that's what I'm here for, to try to do what he can't. Okay, let's see how they finish this.
Different thoughts about how to approach that. And the reality is that you're trying to make the Sheikh Jarrah a dispute of 5 families that needs to be resolved. I'm not undermining.
Let's continue.
The core of the issue is that they have deeds that prove an offer inside the time. Now we're
Elad, if we're going to get into
for a Supreme Court legal
if we're going to get into
but you're going to that legal.
Elad, you answered. We're going to get into if we're going to get into property deeds, I'm sure there's a fair. But
Okay, so
you
they're
say
still talking about
apartheid
this.
is a wrong description, favoring Jews. It's a Jewish state. Again, deputy mayors elected to
Time, but this
and says that's the right thing to do.
Mehdi,
Jews in East Jerusalem. You can condemn it tonight and say you don't speak for them. Would you?
So I condemn it tonight, and I don't speak for those people, those right-wing that think that they can get rid of whoever they want and put Jewish families in instead without any regard to anything at all, including to their own future. So let's continue.
Mehdi, what I want Agile in a very sensitive place to try to like now we're falling to all the lies.
No, you're giving our critics. That's a pretty damning admission, isn't it?
Okay, so this is important.
Said over the weekend that Israel should prioritize the passionate and unequivocal support of evangelical Christians over that of American Jews, who he said are disproportionately among our critics. That's a pretty...
So this is a big issue in Israel, and this is an eternal issue that has less to do with this conflict, and this has to do with the different sects in Judaism. And one of the biggest sects in Judaism is the Reform Jews, which the American Jews comprise. Many of them comprise of the American Jews, and in Israel they are, by the Orthodox Jews, they are not accepted as Jewish enough or Jewish at all. And because the right-wing government that has been in control for the last 15 years are dependent on the extreme Orthodox parties, they also disconnected slowly from a major part of the American Jewish community, and they relied more on the evangelical Christians that believe in the end of day story that all the Jews need to come to Israel. They have a story that for now is in Israel's, this government at least, interest. So they traded the evangelicals for the Jews, and it's very bad. It's extremely bad. Many Israelis are very worried about it because we see, at least I see, all the American Jews as part of my family, as part of my people, no matter which sect they're on, reforms, conservative, and so on. And this is a big problem that this government is heading, and this is part of the reason that I am against this government. And it's the religious problem is one of the main problems that Israel has at the moment. Let's continue.
Pretty damning admission.
Us who have high appreciation towards him, but I will tell you, it's very important for us.
So talking about the U.S. aid, I want to say once here, this video is very important because it brings up a lot of topics. The U.S. aid, I do not want U.S. aid. Israel is a sovereign country, and this U.S. aid makes us dependent on America in many ways, and America decides many of the things that we should be able to decide for ourselves. So me personally, I am against this U.S. aid, and I think that today Israel is a strong enough and rich enough country to survive and succeed without that aid anymore. Let's continue. Let's finish this.
And we're working also in American important with all the
Last question.
under the Trump peace plan to keep the path for us under the Trump peace.
Can you take a yes or no? And we're totally out of time, so one last question, yes or no? I can only take a yes or no. You speak for the Israeli government. Does the Israeli government support a two-state solution?
We promised under the Trump.
Okay, so blah, 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 blah. He cannot say yes. He cannot say yes because he's representing a certain party. It doesn't matter what he thinks in his head. He cannot say yes. Well, I'm telling you that I'm for the two-state solution, and most Israelis are for this two-state solution when push comes to shove. Um, and I want to say one last thing before I finish this video. This video had a lot of subjects in it, and it very good video to talk about. But I want to say that it's time to stop everything. I want to talk to the Israeli Jews. I want to talk to the Palestinian Israeli Arabs. I want to talk to the Palestinian Arabs, and I want to talk to everybody else who's watching this. It's time to move on. It's time to move forward. It's time to accept our differences, but accept that we can and should live together. Yes, it's time to try a different path. Let's try talking. If it doesn't work in a few years, if things get worse, we can always go back to fighting. That's always an option that's there for both sides. Let's try talking. We have these platforms today, YouTube, Facebook, whatever. Make video, make contacts, reach out in peace. And all those who are going to dislike this video for whatever reason, at least if you're going to comment and say this is propaganda, you're going to dislike it, whatever, give a reason. These are not short videos, and I say a lot in them. Give a reason why you don't like it. What did I say that you don't agree with? Why you don't agree with me? I may change my mind. I changed my mind many times throughout my life. Okay, guys, so I hope you'll have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.